Hi everybody, this is Dan Fredrickson, creator of the Hyperbaric Lifestyle and author of the book Bohica, Stories of Navy Divers. Okay, today I wanted to talk about legalized drug pushing training. What the heck is that? Well, I want to tell you about an experience I had with a friend of mine. My friend Dr. Earl was a gynecologist and he was about 20 years older than I was. And he started having eye issues. He had macular degeneration and couldn't drive anymore at night. So he asked me if I would drive him over to a drug presentation at a hotel in Newport Beach. His wife hated these things. She called it a dog and pony drug training program, and that's all she would say about it and refused to go anymore. So he asked me if I would drive him that night, and I said, sure, that sounded like fun, especially since there was a free meal and all you could drink there. I thought that would be a great deal. So on the way there, we had a great discussion. I didn't want to just sit there as his chauffeur, driver. So we thought it would be fun if I became Dr. Dan, his new partner. So that became our new business arrangement. When we got over to the hotel, it was gorgeous there. The place was a high-end, exclusive hotel. We walked in the door and we were greeted by 4 of the most beautiful salespeople you could ever believe, 2 men and 2 women. It was amazing. I mean, they were 10 on a scale of 10 in Southern California, which is extreme. And you almost couldn't take your eyes off them. They were that good looking. They were modeled great. And I could see why there were only older men at this training. I was the youngest doctor there. And because I was the youngest, they came to me exclusively because the other guys had been to lots of them because I was new. I was a new prospect and I had a lot more years to sell their drugs for them. So they worked on me really, really well. We had a great meal, went through all the drug presentation, and it went on for about 30 minutes after we were done eating, drinking, and getting us in the mood. I couldn't believe what I saw. On and on for approximately 30 minutes, they talked about how wonderful these things were, all your life-changing experiences, and because of this, patients would just be doing so much better. The problem was, there was no avenue for healing in this thing. So, what do? You have a drug that does nothing but just mask symptoms. So, after a while, we heard that, and we heard about maybe the 10% part of it where they talked about the side effects or the minor side effects. And the object there was to not go into the side effects, but was how to convince your patient that in the long run, despite these side effects, their life was going to be so much more tolerable. I hated that word because they use it so much. You can tolerate this better. I didn't want to tolerate anything. I wanted my life set to where I got myself healthier and healthier so I wouldn't need to go to a doctor. After we were done with the presentation, they had a question and answer period. And I had a lot of questions, but I didn't want to be a total jerk on the thing, considering that I was never going to sell their drugs. But I had to ask, after listening to this, can you tell me what the path of healing was with this drug? And they said, well, this in the long run was going to be between you and your patient, that you have to decide if this was the way towards a tolerable lifestyle. They kept using that word tolerable. I hated it. I raised my hand again. I said, well, I still don't see a path to healing with this drug. That's when the money showed up. They said, oh, we are so glad you asked that question again. And they said, by the way, if you sign up with us and start to promote this, we have a special training for you and your wife or a significant other for 10 days, totally paid, to Honolulu, Hawaii. You'll have training almost every day while you're there, and then you'll be able to enjoy your Honolulu training experience. I'm thinking, training experience? So this is how pharmaceutical drugs get to be paid to doctors. They don't get paid right off the bat. They can't get paid legally for prescribing drugs or get a percentage of it unless they're a cancer doctor. For some reason, cancer doctors can get kickbacks from drugs. I don't understand how that is legal, but it still happens. So instead of collecting kickbacks, doctors get training. I ended up going to 3 more of these meetings with my friend Dr. Earl. Why? Well, steak, lobster, creme brulee, expensive wine. I was a single dad at that time with my 2 daughters, and I didn't have a great occasion to be able to have really good steak, lobster, creme brulee, wine, really any wine, not expensive. So I still had to fulfill my fake doctor chauffeur bribery. And I could be bribed. You just keep feeding me steak, lobster, and creme brulee, and I'll show up for these meetings with my friend Dr. Earl almost every time. My only issue I had with sitting there pretending to be a doctor was my back brain fear that someone would run into the room and say, "There's an emergency! There's an emergency! I need a doctor! Is there a doctor in the house?" Luckily, that never happened. And looking around, seeing everyone pointing at me, thank God I escaped that. As you can tell from this experience, I don't have a very high opinion of most pharmaceutical drug companies. Their idea is to promote their drugs to make it a lifestyle for you. I want hyperbaric lifestyle, which promotes healing and health without any drugs. This is the pharmaceutical lifestyle, which promotes everything that includes nothing but drugs to keep you healthy. I couldn't live like that. Pharmaceutical drug companies are notorious drug pushers. When you look at it, think about it. What's the difference between these guys with their beautiful clothes and their beautiful faces and all those things like that, any different than the guy on the street corner with a jacket, opening up his coat going, "You need anything? You want anything?" I have to say, these guys are at least way more honest about the products they're selling. And how many people are sitting in jail right now because of illegal drugs? And I sit at this wonderful table in this beautiful hotel listening to these great people here tell me about all these legal drugs, which are as bad or worse than many of the street drugs. How is this any different? My goal and idea of life is to not have to see a doctor and keep myself as healthy as possible. The pharmaceutical lifestyle wants you to have health in a bottle. That's not anything I ever want to live for. Who would want to have to wait for health in a bottle instead of finding out health is out there for anyone that wants to without any drugs? I had experience at Kaiser Permanente about 20 years ago. I was just turned 50 and I was going in for a full physical. They went through the whole business all day long, poking and prodding and taking samples. And finally, when I was done, I had a Chinese from China doctor come in there and explain the results and talk to me. So while we were sitting in the office there, he was looking through his paperwork and he said to me, he goes, "Everything looks very good for your age." And I said, "Oh, that's great." He goes, "But I want to prescribe these 3 different drugs for you." I kind of looked at him and said, "What do you mean? Why do I need any drugs?" He goes, and so he said, "Oh, these are to prevent you from having any of these other problems later." I just couldn't deal with that. I looked at him, I said, "Well, I don't have anything now. Why do I need them? To prevent illness?" And I looked at him and said, "How old are you?" He says, "Well, I'm 52. And I said, "Well, are you taking any of these drugs? Or any of your family?" And he couldn't look me in the eye. And he said, "No." I said, "Well, then why are you telling me this is a good thing to do and for me to be on these to stay healthy and you're not even doing it yourself. I can't see someone being such a hypocrite. But then his answer, when he finally looked me in the eye and said, I've been told that everyone over 50, we're supposed to prescribe these drugs to them. So that says right there that our medical industry is broken. They're doing nothing but just prescribing drugs to make money. What else is there? You know, they're not healing you. These drugs didn't do anything for me, and they weren't going to, besides cost me money and have me have side effects I wouldn't have had without them. Except for the slicing, dicing, and mechanical injuries that we have, our medical industry does not know how to treat any chronic diseases. The only thing that they can do is hand you a pill and push you out the door and hope you don't come back with something that they can't figure out how to treat. That's the problem with our medical industry today. Doctors are great mechanics, but they're terrible lifestyle coaches. They don't even follow it themselves. The worst part of this is they try to tell you to do this and this and this, but then when they don't do it themselves, how can you have any respect for them? I read an article a few years back called Dead Doctors Don't Lie. It was about the top 10 heart surgeons in the world who were doing all these heart replacements and were cutting edge on all the medical industry when it came to your heart. They told all their patients, don't smoke, don't drink, exercise, lose weight, everything they told them. Every one of these doctors died by the time they were 55 years old of heart attacks. They did autopsies on all of them, and every one of them had been chronic smokers, drinkers, and all were overweight and never exercised. They had high-stress jobs, and the number one thing was they had multiple different pharmaceutical drugs in their systems that were all self-prescribed. So how are you supposed to have any respect for a doctor that tells you to do something and does none of what he says? That's what's the problem with our medical industry now. Let me give you a couple examples of how the medical industry ripped us off and were abusing us. When I was a kid, every child had to have their tonsils and adenoids taken out. This was an automatic procedure. You're in one day and out. You're in the hospital overnight. Doctors made tons of money on it. There was no need for it. They found out later that there was no call for these types of operations. So they were eliminated. Next were high cholesterol drugs. It was the same thing. Everything in our bodies is different. We have genetic differences in cholesterol levels, and the same thing with high blood pressure medicines. Everybody is genetically different, and they tried to tell us that we were all the same and that these drugs would regulate it. And what was funny about both of these things is that over the years, as more and more people found out that it was really a bunch of garbage, is that they kept lowering the numbers, which means like before, if you were on a 300 number, whatever that meant, you had to take the drug. Then all of a sudden it was 275. Pretty soon it was 250. And there was no reason for these numbers to come down except for it added more people to the drug protocol there. Said, oh, you qualify for this, like it was something special. I couldn't stand that. And last but not least was something that they did in the 60s and 70s. This was one of the more horrible things that they got caught doing. They used to do hysterectomies on women for basically no reason. They had no reason to do 99% of them. What they did is they told the woman that, well, you're having menopause symptoms and we can make this all go away by this little operation here. And most women said, okay, they believed their doctor. And it turned out they just got butchered. They had all of their organs taken out. And what happened then is they were on artificial hormone drugs, and trying to balance those out for the rest of their life was a difficult situation. And these are just a few. And the only problem is when they get found out, the medical industry pays off all the people that were suing them, covers it up, starts on another one. We're just having to find out more and more all the time. Well, as you can see from this information, our medical industry has a couple of goals. Make money, don't get sued. That's the biggest goal of our medical industry. Doctors imply, would you rather make all of these radical changes in your life, or would you rather just take this pill and have a nice, easy day and not have to do any of these complete disruptive changes? I think I'd rather do changes than have a side effect pill. The great part about disrupting your life is it makes you do changes. You can go out and you can look at all the different alternatives to what these doctors are doing for you. We have, obviously, I'm promoting hyperbarics. There's far infrared saunas. There's just taking a walk on the beach and balancing your body's frequencies. Fresh air and a walk on the beach or in the woods are just as good as going to the doctor and getting a pill in most cases. The idea is to look and educate yourself to you being in charge of your health and not having that doctor there. Have him as your advisor on only certain things, and then you can discuss your health. You're in charge of your health. If you let someone else be in charge of your health, you're at their mercy and you have no one to complain about but yourself. And just remember, don't let someone with a DR in front of their name dictate how you are going to live your life. It's been great talking to you today. This is Dan Fredrickson, and I want to remind you that the only change that you can control in your life is the change you do in yourself.